Hello everyone, myself Dr. Nirban Lashkar, Assistant Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, Mizoram University, India. I welcome you all for the webinar session. I am delighted and honored to host the webinar session on the topic Atmospheric Disaster, COVID-19 and the Way Forward. The world is going through a tough situation, and I believe the wheel of knowledge should not stop because knowledge is power. We can gain anything with knowledge. We are not in a position to conduct seminar, workshop where we can physically meet or read today. But we all are here today in this platform thanks for digital technology. Mizoram University constantly every day conducting online series, webinar, and this is a great way to go for digital. A small step, but very significant towards making India a digitally powered nation. Now, let me introduce our honorable speaker of the session, Dr. Wesam Al Mehmood, a renowned specialist in the field of environmental engineering. Currently, he is a lecturer at University Tun Hussein Un, Malaysia. He was a visiting scholar, Malaysia Japan International Institute of Technology, Malaysia. He was a visiting research fellow, MIT, postdoctorate fellow, Malaysia Japan International Institute of Technology, assistant professor, IUG Ghazi. With a number of publications and citations, his area of interest is air pollution and climate change. I welcome you, sir, for this session.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Now I request you, sir, to go for this session. Digital platform is all yours. I request all the participants, if there is any question and answer round, please there is a symbol Q&A. Please go for it. Thank you. Sir, it's all yours.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. And thank you, Dr. Nirban. And thanks for the organizing committee for Mizoram University. And it is my pleasure to be with you today and to share some views on COVID-19 and what is I'm using to say and call it atmospheric disaster and what is the way forward. So now everybody is living in a harsh condition, in a difficult condition because of the pandemic of the COVID-19. And we know that the world is facing many troubles even before the pandemic. We are talking about environmental challenges. And according to the Global Assessment on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services in 2019, which reported that 1/3 of the world's top soil degraded, and more than 85% of the wetland have been lost. 32% of the world's forests have been destroyed. At least 55% of the ocean area covered by industrial fishing, and 33% of the fish stock suffer from overfishing, and 83% of the freshwater population have been seeing a decline since 1970. So these are some of the environmental challenges that we've been facing globally. So some of those issues are local challenges and also global as well. So, okay, you might be surprised why I said atmospheric disaster. Let me now try to explain my argument here. As you see here in this graph, you can see the disasters, the natural disasters from 1900 to 2018. And this is also the number of deaths due to those disasters, whether we are talking about flooding, landslides, extreme temperature, extreme weather, earthquakes, volcanic, dry mass movements. So as you can see here, let me just show you using the pointer. Okay, so you can see here that the peak was in like 1930, and we had almost like maybe 3.6 million victims due to these disasters. So this is from 1900 up to 2018, right? So let's go and see the next slide. So, here this is the latest, this is today's number on the coronavirus cases. So far we have 6.263 million, right, cases. We have 373,899 victims. This is due to the coronavirus, and this is globally, right? And we have almost 2.9 million recovered. So here you can see the cases in India, right? And you can see from the graph, and this is also from today, this is the latest graph from the statistics. So you can see here the cases in India, and this is the total cases. So we are approaching almost like 200,000 cases, right? And for the, here you can see the map of India, and you see the distribution of the confirmed cases. And this is from 17 May. And you can see the color code, which shows the cases in each of the state in India. So it's almost like the whole country suffering from the COVID-19 and the occurrence of the cases almost in each state, in each district. And you can see here the intensity. So the dark color is, we're talking about 10,000 cases and 10,000 plus, and then you go 5,000 to 9,000, then you go to the lower level. So means the whole country almost infected by the pandemic. And this is the number of deaths in India due to the coronavirus, and it is the latest up to 30th of May. And we are talking about like 5,800 cases, right? Okay. So here is the argument. I shown a figure which shows the disaster along the history from 1900. And we seen that the peak was in 1930, we talked about let's say 3.6 million, right? And here you can see this is the latest report from 2019 from the WHO, right? And this report stated that annually we are talking about 7 million deaths due to air pollution, right? And this is the distribution of the cases: over 2 million in Southeast Asia, 2 million in Western Pacific, nearly 1 million in African region, 500,000 in Eastern Mediterranean, 500,000 in Europe, and we are talking about 300,000 in the Americas. So this is annually, So if you compare like to the COVID-19 victims, so far we have 6.3 million, or 6 point something million cases. But here we are talking about 7 million. This is confirmed annually, right? And these are the symptoms, the disease that people will be infected due to the air pollution. We are talking about stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, right? And this is in the whole world. You are talking here about 2 million in Southeast Asia, right? Which include like, the whole region here, including India. Okay, so this map shows the death per 100,000 in India due to air pollution, and this is from 2017. So you can see the distribution of the cases, the deaths in India, and you can see the range from 0 to 22, and almost there is no place with this lower range. While when we talk about the higher range of 90 to 100 per 100,000, talking about this whole region, talking about this district here, right? And you go to the lower ranges from 68 to 90 cases per 100,000. So these are the impacts of air pollution, and this is what I am terming as atmospheric disaster, right? And so we talked in numbers about the victims, and later on I will show you some numbers on the impacts as well, the cost impacts. So here again, we have one more number from India, right? And this is the premature death from exposures to air, to particulate matter, only from particulate and ozone, right? You can see here the numbers in India. We are talking about, so we have 2010 statistics, right? Which is like we are talking about more than 700 per million, right? And this is expected in 2060, right? We're talking about almost 2,000 per million premature deaths due to the outdoor air pollution, right? And this is in India. Okay. So when we talk about the 7 million people dying because of air pollution, so these can be split as based on the statistics from WHO, 21 due to pneumonia, 20% from stroke, 34 from ischemic heart disease, 19% due to the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and 7% from lung cancer. So mostly all these diseases related to lung and heart disease, which causing the majority of the deaths of the 7 million globally. Right? So who is impacted most because of air pollution? So we are talking about children, and pneumonia is the leading cause of death in children under 5 years. Talking about women, women working in smoky kitchens are exposed to high level of household air pollution. And we are talking about the outdoor workers, people who work outdoors, such as street vendors and traffic police, who are affected by air pollution. So those are the three categories that mostly affected by air pollution, by the outdoor and also the indoor air pollution, because of the nature of, like for the policemen and the workers, the nature of their job, and women because they are using the biomass for cooking, and they are exposed to indoor air pollution and outdoor due to the material being used for cooking, and also for the children. So this is the vulnerable groups. So when we talk about the sources of air pollution, and this is common in every country, and definitely in India is the same, we are talking about industry and energy sector. We are talking about transport. We are talking about dust. Sometimes it is dust storms, right? Sometimes dust because of traffic emissions from the roads, the unpaved roads. And sometimes we also have some agriculture practices like burning the waste, burning the agriculture waste, open burning forest fires that will create a lot of pollutants. And we are talking about the household energy, right? And we talk about also the waste management, which can also create and release emissions to the atmosphere, right? So later on, we'll talk about, the efforts to combat the air pollution. And we need to realize that this is a collective responsibility, and even not only about air pollution, this for the environmental issues, we're talking about a collective responsibility where everybody need to contribute and try to minimize, whether at the individual level or institutional level, on how to reduce these negative impacts on the environment that we are living in, because we are harming, if we conduct those activities that harm the environment, we basically harm ourselves, because most of the impacts will be on the public health. Okay, so regarding the household air pollution, which is also common in India, we are talking about 3.8 million people die prematurely every year from household air pollution from cooking. The household air pollution is mostly created by using kerosene and solid fuels such as wood with polluting stoves. and open fires and lamps. And as we mentioned in the previous slide, the women and children are the most at risk, right? And you can see here that 18% die from stroke, 27% from ischemic heart disease, 20% from the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, 8% from lung cancer, 27% due to pneumonia, right? And this is only because of household air pollution, right? And this is mostly will be kind of indoor air pollution. So as you can see here in this graph, when we talk about number of people and percentage of population exposed to household air pollution from solid fuel burning in countries with population over 50 million and at least 10% solid fuel use in 2016, India is leading. We are talking about 43% of the population exposed for such kind of pollutants, which lead to 3.8 million deaths annually, right? So in this case, we are talking here about almost 700 million people who are exposed for this type of pollutants. So this is very serious issue. Okay, so now let's talk about the impacts. When we mention about the disaster, the natural disasters, and we mention about 3.6 people as victims, right? So here, let's see another statistics, and this is from one of the United Nations, this is the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, right? And this is from 2000 to 2012. We are talking about 2.9 people, 2.9 billion people affected, right? 1.2 million killed due to disasters. And we are talking about economic loss, damage of 1.7 trillion, right? So these are the numbers due to the disasters impacts. And we are talking about different types of disasters, and this is a global statistics. So now let's see the cost of air pollution, the economy of air pollution. When we talk about the cost of air pollution, we talk about the damage to the health, economic, agriculture, biodiversity, and this is costing us a lot. So the global air pollution related healthcare costs are projected to increase from 21 billion in 2015 to 176 billion in 2060. So you imagine this number, this is the cost of air pollution, right? 176 billion. So in 2015, we are talking about 21 billion. In 2060, it's expected to be 176 billion USD. By 2060, the annual number of lost working days, which affect labor productivity, are projected to reach 3.7 billion, right? Currently, we are talking about 1.2 billion working days. So normally, you know, when for those who been sick due to air pollution, so they can't go to work. So we lose the productivity of one guy. If somebody else need to accompany him or her to go to the hospital, then we lose the productivity of one more guy. And then it depends on the seriousness of the disease, how long he will be admitted or how long he will need to rest. Then we are talking about those days that we lose the productivity of the labor, and this is affecting the economy. So currently we are talking about 1.2 billion days. In 2060, it's expected to be 3.7 billion days, right? So this is also adding to the economical loss. The market impacts of outdoor air pollution, which include impacts on labor, productivity, health expenditure, agricultural crop yields, and are projected to lead the global economic cost that gradually increase to 1% of the global GDP. So this is expected to be a loss of 1% of the global GDP by 2060. So we are talking about huge loss due to the atmospheric pollutant or the air pollution. So here, another set of numbers, and this is the economic burden of air pollution, and this is from 2018. So you can see here, leading country, China, with loss 6.6 of the GDP due to air pollution. India, second, the loss is 5.4% of the GDP, and this is annually. So annually, India is losing 5.4% of the GDP due to air pollution, right? So you imagine, and you can see here that we are talking about India spends around 1.28% of the GDP on health, while air pollution from the burning fossil fuels cost an estimate 5.4% of India's GDP. So it is a huge loss, and it is estimated somewhere in one of the sources, it's about 150 billion USD annually. This is the loss due to the air pollution, right? So just to compare, this is one of the statistics shows the impact of COVID-19 on the global economy. So you can see here India. It was expected in, or it was in 2019, the economical growth was 5.3, while due to the COVID, it's expected to be 3.6 in 2020. So just compare the numbers that this is because of an historical event, right? It's a historical event. Some people says that this just occurred in 100 years when we talk about the pandemic, but annually, India losing 5.4% of the GDP, right? So in this single event, there will be a reduction like 2, even less than 2%. But here you are losing, India losing 5.4% annually. And this is because of air pollution, which can be controlled because it is being done by the human. It is because of our activities, right? Okay, so this is one more number if you want to compare this is kind of numbers globally. So you can see here, India, and this is, cash and lives, the global cost of air pollution. So air pollution cost 2.9 trillion a year. If you can recall the numbers just now when we mentioned about the whole disasters, right? We talked about, let's just confirm that. So we talked about 1.7, I think. Yeah, we talked about 1.7 trillion, right? In almost 12 years. While now, when we talk about only air pollution alone, right? So air pollution alone now costing 2.9 trillion a year worldwide. So just imagine the difference. This is only a single, that's why I call it disaster, right? So in terms of numbers, I'm talking about 7 million people dying annually. In terms of even economy, you are talking about 2.9 trillion a year worldwide, right? And causing 4.5 million premature death. But the latest one from the WHO, we are talking about 7 million. So you look here at India, right? 150 billion, the loss to the Indian economy. And we are talking about 1 million people dying in India annually because of air pollution, the premature death, right? So I think, if not all, most of you will agree with me that we can call it atmospheric disaster. And if you compare numbers, it's even more serious than the COVID-19, even in terms of numbers and fatalities, human health and economy as well. So here, just I'm sharing here a figure on the impacts on the economy, comparing, the COVID-19 shock, and here the 2009 economic crisis, right? So this is the patterns of the economy, and this is the expected impact of COVID on the economy. And this is here you can see the economic cost of the lockdown, and this is in China. This is the impact on the GDP, United States, Euro area, and United Kingdom. Just wanted to share those numbers on the global scale, just to link the COVID-19 impacts with air pollution. Okay, so now, okay, we talk about the general framework of the environment, previously the disasters, and then we talk about the atmospheric disaster and the numbers, the impacts in terms of health impacts and the economy. So when we want to link that to COVID-19, right, and you read and you hear a lot about some positive impacts of the lockdown on the environment, because like in most of the countries, lockdown was imposed, and there was restriction on the movement, stopping of the industry and the traffic. So that caused the reduction, especially when we talk about the emissions, right? So we had some positive reports on earth healing, reduction of emission, decrease of road accidents, and drop of greenhouse gases, which might slow the climate change, and also less disposal of waste in waterways that make it clearer. You can see here some photos and graphs. So the drastic reduction of environmental pollution eventually lessen the negative impact on our health and lower the cost of healthcare, right? So this is some of the positive impacts of the lockdown or the pandemic era. So the great majority of the global armed conflict also cease naturally, which also preserve human life. This is one more positive impact, that most of the conflict, even most of the serious conflicts ceased naturally. So we save a lot of people's life. So here I'm sharing one graph from India again. And this is the daily PM 2.5 levels in Delhi from it's a comparison between 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 2020. And you can see the time frame is from 23 March up to 13 April. And you can see the blue color in 2020, the emission levels dropped compared to the previous years, right? And that shows a logical and a natural relationship that the stopping of the activities, economic, industry, traffic, lead to a drop in the most dangerous particulates, pollutants, the PM 2.5, which is serious and causing a lot of troubles to the respiratory system. So this is again one of the positive impacts on of the pandemic or the lockdown. So this is a map showing the concentrations of pollutants and the air quality index in India. And this is from today, this morning. I reported from one of the international databases. So you can see here on the right, and this is showing the most polluted cities worldwide. And you can see New Delhi is 6. And the air quality index showing that it is unhealthy for sensitive group now. And this is the map of India with all the districts, all the states, and showing the concentration of pollutants. You can see it range from a few places like unhealthy for sensitive groups and moderate, and some very few areas consider the air quality considered to be good, right? So I'm not sure, like, if you check, this is a accessible database, so you can check the pollutants level, and definitely it's varying from the morning to the afternoon. It depends on the activities, depends on the traffic movements. So that will be fluctuating, and also that also shows the impacts of the lockdown. And even you can see, like, is it the lockdown is very tight in some places, and the other, compared to the others, based on the trends of air pollution, right? Because definitely, or logically, if the pollution level is high, means there are still some activities in this area in terms of traffic, in terms of industry, right? So this is just to share with you the current situation, the current air quality status in India. Okay, so here also some other figures from other countries. So for example, the impact on carbon emissions. In the United States, we are talking about 40% less domestic air traffic, which definitely lead to less carbon emission. And in New York, 50% decrease in carbon monoxide. In Seattle, 41% decrease in peak traffic congestion, right? And definitely when we have less congestion means we have less traffic, then means we have less traffic emissions. In Europe, so we're talking about 67 million fewer air passenger because there is no traffic, no flights, right? And this lead to decrease in nitrogen oxide by 75% in Madrid and 10% in northern Italy. In China, we are talking about improving air quality that might save the life of 4,000 children under 5, because you remember when we talk about the health impacts, the most vulnerable groups, we are talking about women and children. So reduction of emission saved the life of 4,000 people, 4,000 kids in China. And we are talking about 25% drop of carbon emission due to the limitation on the industry and traffic, right? And definitely when we talk about the carbon emission, we link it to the greenhouse gases, and it's linked to the global warming and climatic changes. So this is one more map, shows the reduction of nitrogen dioxide, right? And it's a comparison between, this is from 31st January, this is satellite map, and this is 15 March, and you can see here the concentration dropped, right? Okay, so the impacts on energy, right? In the United States, they are talking about 1.5% of the total power in the US is consumed by data center annually, right? And definitely when we talk about the lockdown, so many of the businesses went online, working from home, so that require more usage of the data and internet, so that increase the demand of energy on those sectors. In Europe, we are talking about 40% increase in broadband demand, right? And they are talking about 9.1 terabyte per second. And this is considered to be a new world record for data. Worldwide, we are talking about 63 million. That is comparable to driving 420 miles or 180 million kilogram of carbon dioxide, right? And in South Korea, they are talking about 30% increase in online gaming activities because people staying home. So again, that increased the demand on energy. Okay, so we talk about the positive impacts, but there are some negative impacts. And one of the clear examples is the medical waste, right? So because we are talking about people admitted in the hospital need to be treated, staying there, we need to use masks, gloves, medicine. So this increase the medical waste. And there are some challenges in the medical waste because we need to store it well and treat it well before we can dispose it, right? And that is dangerous because that can trigger a risk on the human health. So in the United States, they have a surge in solid medical waste, which puts 467K waste collection workers at risk. Yeah, because that also can create risk for the worker themselves, because they are the first cycle that in touch with this waste. The reusable bags are banned in several states. So 1 billion trees per year are needed to package the shipped goods. In Italy, we are talking about 111% increase in consumable spend on packages, right? While in China, we are talking about medical waste quadrupled to 200 ton per day, right? And in Malaysia, there are some studies shows that the medical waste increased by 10% during the COVID-19. So this is one of the negative impacts of the pandemic on the environment, right? Okay, so after we talk about the positive impacts, negative impacts on the environment from the pandemic, the lockdown, right? So what is the way forward? So definitely, when we talk about positive impacts, we have to try to maintain it, right? To maintain the positive impacts on the environment, while if we have some negative impacts, we have to reduce it, we have to eliminate it. So all of us, wherever we are, we should see this crisis as a motivator for a new change in our life in pursuit of sustainable living. So the way forward is sustainability, to try to maintain the balance between our economic needs and environmental protection, and performing that in social justice, right? And these are the 3 pillars of the sustainability. So here are some of the potential future opportunities. So we had the opportunity to see how our world will be and how a cleaner planet is our collective responsibility, right? So when everybody cooperate, right? And we cooperate because there is a risk to our life, and that cause a positive change to the environment. So among the tools at our disposal are the digital economy, which should be seen as a driver for innovation and competitiveness that can be strengthened by global cooperation. Most, if not all, companies have already taken advantage of work remotely, and many reported success and lower the cost as well. So not only it will save money, but it will also lessen the negative impacts on our planet and preserve our resources. Furthermore, the education policies should be aligned with emerging dynamics online learning platform to facilitate and ease the whole process for learners anywhere. And one more aspect is the sustainable agriculture, where the local urban farms and pesticides will be promising metrics to cut food waste and also achieve local food security while saving water and reducing chemical pesticide use. The environmental and personal hygiene awareness should be basic knowledge to be offered starting from kindergarten, because we can see, and it's related to the pandemic and transmission. So that should be kind of a basic knowledge for the kids starting from the early age, so that that can be performed on a daily basis, and then can protect the people, individuals, and the community as well. Preserving the environment should not be seen as an economic burden, rather than an opportunity for business sustainability. And the clear example is recycling and waste to energy approach. And some people, they call it waste wealth approach. So the reduction of pollution is a collective responsibility, talking about the government, industries, communities, NGOs. And that's because we see now all of us are paying costly the price of neglecting the environment, right? So we need to take care of the environment, and that is a collective responsibility. The governmental incentives or tax reduction coupled with solid environmental regulations and policies will facilitate pollution control by the industries. Working from home might be practiced at least for part of the week, as proved by recent studies that it's more productive than working from office. And this practice will reduce traffic congestion, accidents, reduce emissions, save energy, improve human mental health, and strengthen family bonding. But it will also allow companies to spend less on office rental, health expenses, and office supplies. So the aforementioned opportunities to prosper and produce fruitful outcomes, there is a need for stable political environment, strong legal and enforcement system, and generous government budgets for health, education, and IT infrastructure. It is quite clear, right? And that was made crystal clear out of this global health crisis, is that the multi-trillion military budgets were a waste of resources allocation, as they appear to have served no one this pandemic crisis, even among the developed nations. So going back to normal business as usual won't make any of us any safer. So all of us have to adapt and recalibrate, and a healthy ecosystem is a foundation for sustainable economic growth and stable societal well-being. So that's all. I would like to thank you again. And I think we'll open the floor now for Q&A, and I'll give back the floor to Dr. Nirban.
Thank you, sir, for such excellent, informative presentations.
Thank you so much.
Now we are going for question and answer round.
Yes.
So, questions from what can be the best way to forward atmospheric pollution after COVID-19?
Okay, so, you know, when we talk about the atmospheric pollution, so we are talking about different sources, right? And definitely India is, as we also seen from the presentation, that we are talking about traffic, we are talking about industry, we are talking about agriculture waste. So the idea is to maintain the positive change, right? And that will have to be from a different perspective. We are talking about policies, regulations, we are talking about technologies, we are talking about a positive thinking from the business people that it's not a burden, it's an opportunity to save money. We need to think on a holistic approach, right? Because if it is only from the individual approach, so the company will think when they spend money of the controlling the pollutants, that is loss. But and that should be the role of the government if we think about the nationwide, the impact on the economy. And you see from the numbers that we are talking about 5.4% loss of the GDP annually. And you talk about 150 billion USD annually. So if we spend 15 billion on controlling the pollution, we will save 100 billion from the economy. And that economy means the living of the people, talking about the prosperity of the economy, industries. So everybody will be benefiting from that. So, you know, to me, I believe that it is needed more on the paradigm shift. People need to think differently on combating the air pollution. And by the numbers, it's very clear whether we are talking about health and we talk about economy. So if you don't care about environment or health, you just care about the economy. Economy-wise, if you combat, if you reduce the pollutants, you will save billions of USDs annually. And that's not one time, we are talking about an annual loss of 150 billion USD.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Next, what is the correlation between natural disaster and COVID-19?
Yeah, there's an argument about the origin of this virus, right? Some people say that it's being produced in labs. Those who are following the conspiracy theories, some people, they mention that this is a natural virus due to some behaviors, some attitudes, some practices. So definitely, when not to tie it to the COVID-19, but like generally speaking, all these changes in the environment, whether we are talking about air pollution, water pollution, we're talking about soil pollution, we're talking about these various types of pollutants, definitely they cause a lot of troubles. And we can see from numbers, these are even more serious than all the disasters along the history, right? And this causes a lot of health losses and economical losses.
Thank you, sir. The next question is minimum safe of the life strategy of from air pollution from human being. Please give idea.
The minimum safe of life strategy. Yeah, as I mentioned, when talking about the air pollution, so again, it's a collective approach, a collective responsibility, right? From the industry, from the government, from people themselves, from the NGOs, because this needs to be a continuous integrated efforts, and benefits will come again to the community because we will save the human life, right? And you imagine just like, it's to me, when I'm talking about India, it's just like a very good example, because you can see the huge impact, and you can see how the change will be very positive in terms of reduction of emissions and reduction of air pollution. Again, if you talk about environment, you talk about human health, you talk about economy, the impact will be huge.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So the next question, is there any other cause of household pollution apart from open fire like using wood, stoves or kerosene?
Yeah, for the household, actually, there are a lot of sources of pollutants, like even, the paintings, the carpets, the furniture, especially like when the house is quite new and then you buy those items, these create a lot of emissions inside the house. And, the stove, talking about even when if you have a printer, if you have the air fresheners that we use, even if you use some of the those chemicals for cleaning, those also emit pollutants. And the seriousness of the indoor pollutants, if you don't have enough ventilation in the house, means those pollutants will stay there for a while and you will keep inhaling those chemicals, and that will cause a lot of health impacts on the residents.
Thank you, sir. The next is the similar question. How can we overcome from household pollution?
Yeah, definitely this is not easy, because like especially when we talk about big countries such like India, and we are talking about some practices which is linked to the economy. I'm talking about the life expenses. So people are they afford like to use a gas stove, which is like maybe considered to be more safe than using the biomass for cooking. So definitely we have to look into the source of the pollutants. We try to find a more environmental and health friendly product to be used. So, that's why I'm always talking about integrated efforts. Sometimes the resident, the individual, they can do it alone, right? Because it's linked, we can assume, we can give advice, but if people don't afford to do that, definitely they need to survive, and they won't look at the long-term impacts on their health, because the short-term, that they need to fulfill their needs. They need to cook, they need to find food. So yes, maybe in some efforts like the NGOs can play a role, and that was performed in some of the villages and rural areas to try to help, maybe raise fund to try to help those poor people to find a better or alternative energy source that can save them. If you look, if you talk about the other pollutants inside the or indoor environment, definitely like those products that release chemicals, we need to avoid them. And if you need to use them, like yeah, some of those chemicals we need for cleaning, whatever, so we need to make sure that we are not exposed to those chemicals, especially when it is a closed place. Like you need to clean the toilet, like maybe for ladies, they want to clean the toilets and with chemicals, right? So if it is a closed place and there is no ventilation, so the impact can be serious and can be threat to their lives, right? So we have to make sure that we have enough ventilation so that we don't have a health risk on the people. So, you know, we're talking about trying to reduce, trying to replace those chemical products. But if we don't have an option, we have to look at improving the ventilation in the indoor environment so that we have more fresh air to try to disperse those pollutants in the indoor environment.
Thank you, sir. A very interesting question. As lockdown decreases the pollution level, more insulation can be reached. Does it accelerate the frequency of cyclone in near future?
Okay, you know, definitely when we talk about the pollutants and the relationship between those pollutants, whether we are talking about the air pollution, the weather parameters, air pollution, and water pollution issues. So we are talking about ecosystem, which each element affects the others. So definitely it is linked to those natural phenomena. And, you know, for example, when we talk about, you know, greenhouse gases, which increase the global warming, and that will cause climatic change, which nobody yet knows the extent of those climatic change, whether it's extreme temperature, it is more rain, it is causing flooding, it is causing a change in the pressure, it might cause more cyclones, less cyclones. So, but definitely that is very sure when we maintain the balance in the environmental elements in the environmental ecosystem, that will have a positive impact on the whole ecosystem, and that will maintain the ecosystem stable and will maintain the biodiversity as well.
Thank you, sir. After lockdown, how can air pollution increase rapidly? Air pollution can affect COVID.
Okay, so definitely the issue is, and this is, we start seeing that, you know, after like some of the countries being locked down for 2-3 months, and then definitely now start releasing, in many countries, they start releasing the restrictions on the economic activities and on the movement. So the economy recovering in terms of the process. So definitely when they go back and start operating the industries, people start moving on the roads. So definitely that will lead to the high pollutants level. And you know, one of the concern is like might be some of the industries, they will increase production to replace and try to get some, it's kind of the recovery of the economy and try to recover the losses. So that might lead to more pollutants in the near future.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
What accounts for mass starvation, pending property, brutal warfare, creeping diseases, and natural disaster? Who is responsible for this suffering? Do you blame the atmospheric disaster for human suffering? Very interesting question.
Sorry, I just. Which one? Which question? I can't see like.
Sir, what accounts for mass starvation?
Okay. The mass starvation. This is globally or locally, like in India.
I think is not mentioned anything.
Okay. So is the question is it related to air pollution?
Air pollution, yes.
Yeah, okay. So when we talk about the air pollutants, the greenhouse gases, so it is causing climatic change, and one of the aspect is extreme temperature, droughts in some of the places. So that might affect the food security, right? And that might cause impacts on the starvation. So that can be one of the reason, and definitely it's not the only one, because in some countries it's because of conflicts, it's because of war, right? And it's because of injustice in terms of distributing the resources, right? So the reason can be different, but definitely one of them is the air pollution.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, I saw you mentioned sustainable agriculture, local food security. How do you see use positive change aspect regarding policy perspective?
Yeah, in all sectors, in all potential improvements in the future, right? The policy and regulation and the enforcement playing a vital role, right? Because normally, even to control the pollution, or if you want to implement a new practice, right? You need a policy, you need regulation, you need a policy to regulate that, to enforce that, to have the power to enforce that, right? And this is, this has been like practice in some countries, like when you talk about sustainable agriculture or urban agriculture, and that will help to to localize the production, right? To get benefit of the waste of the storm water harvesting, right? So you can save water, you can save spaces, and you can produce your own food locally, right? And that will eliminate one issue which occurred during the pandemic, that the supply chain, right? Because many countries were relying on, for example, on China. So that created a lot of troubles because we had restriction of movements, right? So that can be a threat even to the national security when you have insecure food insecurity. So the future pattern should be try to localize the production, which at least will provide people during crisis, will provide people with their needs. And food is one of the most important aspects to the community.
Thank you, sir. How can a person personally put individual effective effort to control air pollution? Small step.
This is very, very simple. And one of the sources, and this is common even in India and here in this region, in Indonesia and Malaysia, and even in the Middle East, one of the negative practices of people is to burn waste, right? The open burning. That can be on a smaller scale on the household, and on larger scale on the forest fires. So this is nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with industry, nothing to do with fuel. It is just a negative behavior, a negative attitude of the people. So that can contribute much to their lowering the air pollution levels. So here people can play a good role, a positive role to control the emission by eliminating the open burning or the agriculture and waste burning. And that will need a lot of awareness for the public on those. Like you need to create a lot of awareness, because it's not only about protecting the environment, it's about protecting our health, because when we burn the waste, and especially if you have, that can be the worst case scenario, if you have plastic materials that will release toxins, which is carcinogenic to the health.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more question. Hi, countries are pushing themselves on one side to become a manufacturing giant. As we have seen recently, India is on the way to invite industries. What can we do or the government can do to have less impact on environment?
From the industry.
From the industrial prospect.
Yeah, you know, I am always mentioning about sustainability because that is the best approach. Definitely, we can't neglect industry, we can't neglect economy, but at the same time, we can't neglect the environment. So we have to find the balance between those three sectors: economy, environment, and society. So economy, definitely we need to provide people with their needs, right? Same time, we need to protect the environment, and we have to have a social justice in distributing those resources. But if we definitely each country investing and promoting and encouraging the economic development, right? Because that will contribute to the economy. But same time, we need to maintain and we need to enforce a policy, environmental policy that maintain and reduce the emissions from the industry. So again, if we think about the economy, about this point from the economy from the economy view, as it is lost, definitely no one will agree to do anything. But the government should make sure that those industries will maintain pollutants level which within the standard. And some, you know, the government can play a role in giving some incentives to the industries. Like, for example, why not we consider the air pollution or the pollution control mechanisms, devices that the industries deploy, we can consider them as a CSR project, or the government can give them some tax incentives, right? Tax reduction or some incentives. Maybe they can get loans from the banks and with low interest rate if they want to use those fund for the reduction of the pollutants. And again, we go at the holistic approach, the bigger view. This will contribute positively to the country. This will contribute positively to the holistic economy of the country and will save. I don't want to talk that I want to save 100% of 150 billion, which is the loss. Let's say I just save 30% of that. I save 50 billion. You imagine how much this amount can create a lot of activities, a lot of development, which can serve the community and can serve the country.
Thank you. Last question. Sir, how civil engineer can contribute in reduction of air pollution?
Yeah, you know, for civil engineers, my background is civil engineering, right? And all the civil engineering students will study about environment. So environment is one of the aspects and is one of the fields of civil engineering, right? So definitely some of the civil engineers later on will work as maybe in projects like to do environmental assessment, or even when they work as civil engineer, they have to be in mind that to maintain a less negative impacts from the activities being implemented in the projects. So that is an ethical responsibility and might be some of it a professional responsibility to maintain that when they implement the projects. So definitely civil engineer can play a big role because the projects, we are not talking about only emissions from the industries, we are talking about even impacts from the civil projects like construction of buildings, construction of roads. Even when we talk about water treatment and wastewater treatment plants, those can be a source for pollution. So we have to maintain a standard in each project that we need to minimize the impacts on the environment, and that can be played by the civil engineer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a very nice interactive session. So before closing the session, I would again like to thank our honorable speaker, Dr. Wasim sir. And I like to invite our VC sir, Mizoram University, Professor K.R.S. Samashiva Rao, to speak a few words.
Oh, thank you. Very good presentation. I have been hearing since 45 minutes. I joined very late. Congratulations. Very nice. Sim, you have done a very good presentation. I congratulate you for wonderful help to our university. And all the participants are very much prizing your presentation. And more than 500, 600 participants are there. And it's a great help to our university. And you have done very nicely justification for your presentation. I thank you very much for helping our university and many people from different parts of the country to give your academic contribution for this particular area, and particularly on the post-pandemic work, that is situation. And it's really good. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. And I'm looking forward for more collaboration with your university. Sure. And this is, this is the way for us to contribute.
Professor, it is in Kuala Lumpur or somewhere?
No, my university is in Johor, which is like in the south, and it's close to Singapore.
Singapore, okay. Yeah. Because I was there last 2-3 months back to Malaysia, University of Terengganu. I was there in Terengganu, Kuala Lumpur, and
Lantan.
Lantan.
So we will welcome you. Yeah, you are welcome also to visit our campus later on when things get to normal. And definitely
almost 10 days I was there in Malaysia in the last 3 months back.
Oh, okay.
Before COVID.
So, yeah, we can work on developing the collaboration between our universities.
Very good.
And I think there is a lot of things to be done, which, something that we can share, we can get benefit from each other experience. And that's the way of, sharing knowledge between each other.
Yes, very good. A very nice presentation. I was hearing very patiently. You are giving very good answers. Because some other engagement, I was a bit late in joining the webinar, but okay, almost I was there since 11 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
Nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to thank also the participants. And this is a huge audience. This is my pleasure to interact with you. And I would like to develop more collaborations with the Indian institution. I would like to have more interactions, and I think we can do a lot of things together. And I'm open for any kind of collaboration.
Yes, sir. Surely, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great opportunity for us. And thank you, Professor Samashiva Rao, sir. He is a very effective person who is guiding us throughout this session. I like to thank our HOD, sir, Dr. Lal Sailo, sir, my colleagues, Dean, sir, the technical team of Mizoram Universities for smooth conducting of webinar sessions. And I like to congratulate to all the participants for the success of this webinar. I wish you all the best in the course of future development. Looking forward to see you again. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Inform all the participants that you will get this presentation in our Mizoram University YouTube channels, and certificates will be provided within 5 to 7 days.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for the participants as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it.
Okay, bye.